In the Etiko household, education was everything, until the day an uneducated man taught them the difference between having degrees and having wisdom. Daniel Okafor could buy anything in the world except the one thing he wanted most: a family that would love him for who he was, not what he owned. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows of the Etiko family home, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. Mary Etiko sat at her desk, grading papers from her students at St. Catherine's Academy, one of Nigeria's most prestigious schools. At 26, she had already established herself as one of their finest teachers, following in the footsteps of a family that valued education above all else. The Etiko household was a testament to academic achievement. Her mother, Dr. Grace Etiko, held degrees in civil engineering along with multiple qualifications in sciences and engineering, her certificates proudly displayed in the living room. Her father, Professor James Etiko, was a renowned chef lecturer with extensive qualifications in law, food science, and nutrition. Her twin brothers, Michael and Matthew, were in their final year of medical school, while her older sister Sarah worked as a commercial pilot for one of Africa's leading airlines. Education wasn't just important to the Etikos, it was everything. It was their identity, their pride, and their measure of a person's worth. It was at Sarah's birthday celebration at the Transcorp Hilton that Mary first met Daniel Okafor. He wasn't the most striking man in the room, but there was something magnetic about his quiet confidence. While other guests flaunted their degrees and achievements, Daniel listened more than he spoke, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in others. "What do you do?" Mary had asked during their first dance. "I'm in business," Daniel replied with a modest smile. "Nothing too exciting. What about you?" "I teach at St. Catherine's Academy, literature and creative writing." She noticed he didn't press for more details about his work, which was refreshing compared to most men she met who led with their credentials. Over the following months, their relationship blossomed. Daniel was unlike anyone Mary had ever met. He was generous with his time, thoughtful in his gestures, and possessed a wisdom that seemed to come from real-world experience rather than textbooks. He would pick her up after school in his modest Honda Accord, take her to small local restaurants, and listen for hours as she shared her dreams of one day pursuing music professionally. "You have an incredible voice, Mary," he would tell her after she hummed along to songs on the radio. "Why don't you pursue it?" "My family would never understand," she would reply. "The Etikos don't become entertainers. We become doctors, lawyers, engineers, pilots, professionals." Daniel would nod thoughtfully but never pushed. Instead, he supported her in small ways, buying her music books and encouraging her to join the church choir. When Mary finally introduced Daniel to her family 6 months later, the atmosphere in the Etiko home turned icy within minutes. "So Daniel," Professor James began, adjusting his glasses as he studied the young man across their dinner table, "Mary tells us you're in business. What did you study?" Daniel shifted slightly in his chair. "I didn't complete university, sir. I started working quite early." The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Grace set down her fork with a slight clink that seemed to echo through the room. "I see," she said coolly. "And what exactly do you do in this business?" "I run a small company, ma'am. We do okay." Michael, home from medical school for the weekend, exchanged glances with his twin brother Matthew. Sarah, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Mary, could I speak with you in the kitchen for a moment?" The confrontation that followed was swift and brutal. The family made their position crystal clear. Daniel was not suitable for their daughter. He lacked education, ambition, and the intellectual foundation necessary to be part of their family. "He's beneath you, Mary," Dr. Grace said firmly. "We've worked too hard to build this family's reputation to have you throw it away on someone with no qualifications, no future." Professor James was more direct. "That boy will never be our son-in-law. If you continue this relationship, you'll be doing so without our blessing or support." Over the following weeks, the pressure intensified. Every family gathering became an interrogation about her relationship status. Her parents would present her with profiles of suitable men. doctors, lawyers, engineers, all from families they deemed appropriate. Mary found herself caught between her love for Daniel and her deep-rooted need for her family's approval. The Etikos had always been close-knit, and the thought of being ostracized was unbearable. One evening, as she and Daniel sat in his small but comfortable apartment, she finally broke down. "Daniel, I need you to understand something about my family," she began, tears streaming down her face. "Education means everything to them. They can't see past the fact that you didn't go to university." Daniel held her hand gently. "And what do you see, Mary?" "I see the man I love. I see someone who's kind, thoughtful, and makes me feel like I can be myself. But," she paused, struggling with the words, "maybe they have a point. Maybe you should consider going back to school. Getting a degree. It would make things so much easier." The hurt in Daniel's eyes was unmistakable, but he kept his voice steady. "You want me to go to school to prove my worth to your family?" "Not to prove your worth to them," Mary said desperately, "but to show them that you're serious about bettering yourself. That you're worthy of me." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "Mary, I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. But I won't pretend to be someone I'm not to win your family's approval. If my education, or lack thereof, is what defines my worth to you and your family, then maybe we want different things from this relationship." The argument that followed was their worst yet. Mary, overwhelmed by months of family pressure, found herself echoing her parents' words about ambition, education, and social standing. Daniel listened quietly, and when she finished, he simply said, "I'll think about what you've said." 3 months later, Professor James Etiko collapsed during a lecture at the university. The diagnosis was devastating: end-stage kidney disease. He needed a transplant immediately. The family rallied around their patriarch, but reality quickly set in. As government employees and academics, despite their prestigious titles, the Etikos had never been wealthy. Their combined salaries, stretched between house payments, school fees for the twins, and daily expenses in Nigeria's challenging economy, had left them with minimal savings. A kidney transplant in Nigeria's private healthcare system cost nearly 15 million naira. Money they simply didn't have. The government hospital had placed Professor James on a waiting list for a free transplant, but the doctors were frank about his chances. The wait could be years, and his condition was deteriorating rapidly. Dr. Grace tried everything. She applied for loans, reached out to colleagues, and even considered selling their family home. Sarah offered her pilot salary, and the twins considered dropping out of medical school to work. Nothing was enough. As Professor James grew weaker in his hospital bed, the family watched helplessly, their prestigious degrees and certificates powerless against this crisis. It was Sarah who called Mary with the news that would change everything. "Mary, you need to get to the hospital immediately. Someone has paid for Papa's surgery. The full amount, 15 million naira. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning." "What? Who would do such a thing?" Mary asked, rushing to gather her things. The donor wished to remain anonymous, but the hospital said the payment came from Okafor Industries. The name hit Mary like a thunderbolt. Okafor, Daniel's surname. At the hospital, she found her family in a state of confusion and gratitude. Her father, though weak, was alert and hopeful for the first time in months. "We don't understand who would do this for us," Dr. Grace said, tears in her eyes. "But we're grateful. So very grateful." Mary stepped outside and called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. "Thank you," she whispered into the phone. "For what?" he asked gently. "You know for what. The surgery. My father's kidney." There was a pause. "Your father is a good man, Mary. He deserves to live. Family is important." "Daniel, please. I need to see you. I need to understand." Okafor Industries. "Who are you really? Meet me at the coffee shop where we had our first real date tomorrow evening, after your father's surgery. There are things I need to tell you." Professor James's surgery was successful. As he recovered in the ICU, Mary sat across from Daniel in the small coffee shop where they'd shared so many conversations months before. "I should have been honest from the beginning," Daniel began, stirring his coffee absently. "But when you're in my position, it's hard to know if people love you or what you represent." "What position, Daniel?" He pulled out his phone and showed her a news article from Business Day Nigeria. The headline read, "Daniel Okafor, 31, named Forbes Africa's youngest billionaire for second consecutive year." Mary stared at the screen, then at Daniel, then back at the screen. The photo showed him in an expensive suit, standing in front of a modern office building with Okafor Industries emblazoned across the top. "You're..." she started but couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm the CEO and founder of Okafor Industries. We specialize in technology and renewable energy solutions across West Africa. The company is worth about $2.3 billion as of last quarter." Mary felt the world spinning around her. "But your apartment, your car, the way you dress." "I bought that apartment when I was 22 and just starting out. I kept it because it reminds me of who I was before all this. The car runs fine, and expensive clothes don't make me a better person." He leaned forward. "Mary, I have 3 degrees, one from MIT, one from Stanford, and an honorary doctorate from the University of Lagos. I just earned them while building my company, not before." The silence stretched between them as Mary processed this information. "Why didn't you tell me? Tell my family?" Daniel's expression grew sad. "Because I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have or what I've achieved. When I met you for the first time in years, someone was interested in my thoughts, my character, my dreams, not my bank account or my business success. But when my family judged you, when I pressured you about school, you showed me that you weren't ready to love me as I was. You wanted me to change, to prove myself worthy according to your family's standards. That told me everything I needed to know." Mary felt tears streaming down her face. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. My family was wrong." Daniel reached across the table and gently wiped her tears. "I don't hate you, Mary. I could never hate you. But this experience showed me that we want different things. You need someone who fits into your family's idea of success. I need someone who loves me whether I'm a billionaire or a security guard. I do love you. I love you, Daniel. Not your money, not your degrees, not your company. I love the man who listened to me sing, who encouraged my dreams, who just saved my father's life without expecting anything in return." Daniel smiled sadly. "You love me now, knowing what you know. But you didn't trust that love when it mattered. When your family pressured you, when society's expectations weighed on you, you chose their approval over our relationship." Despite Mary's pleas, Daniel's decision was final. He had learned, he said, that love without trust and acceptance wasn't enough to build a life on. "I hope you find someone who makes you happy, Mary. Someone your family approves of from the start. You deserve that peace." The last thing he said to her was, "Follow your music. You have too much talent to waste it trying to be who others think you should be." As Professor James recovered with his new kidney, a permanent reminder of Daniel's generosity, the Etiko family was forced to confront the magnitude of their misjudgment. The man they had dismissed as unworthy had saved their patriarch's life, asking for nothing in return. Dr. Grace struggled with guilt and shame. "We were so wrong about him, James. So terribly wrong." Professor James, weak but alive, nodded slowly. "Education taught us facts, Grace. But we never learned wisdom. That young man had more character in his little finger than we recognized." 4 months after Daniel's departure, Mary felt lost. She continued teaching at St. Catherine's, but her heart wasn't in it. The prestigious job that had once been her pride now felt like a prison of expectations. Her family, chastened by their experience with Daniel, tried to support her, but Mary found herself increasingly resentful of the values that had cost her the love of her life. The emphasis on degrees, titles, and social status seemed hollow now. It was her father who finally gave her the push she needed. "Mary," he said one evening as they sat together in the garden, "that young man told me something before he left. What did he say? He said you had the most beautiful voice he'd ever heard, and that music was your true calling. He asked me to encourage you to pursue it. Professor James paused, looking at his daughter with new understanding. Maybe it's time we Etikos learned that there are many ways to be successful, many ways to contribute to the world. That night, Mary made the most difficult decision of her life. She resigned from St. Catherine's Academy and used her savings to produce her first demo recording. The Nigerian music industry in the mid-2010s was experiencing a renaissance, and Mary's unique blend of contemporary Afrobeats with classical training caught attention immediately. Her debut single, True Colors, a haunting ballad about authenticity and self-acceptance, went viral within weeks. Record labels began calling. Within 6 months, she had signed with Maven Records, one of Nigeria's premier music labels. Her first album, Breaking Free, debuted at #1 on Nigerian charts and gained international recognition. The lyrics, deeply personal and drawn from her experiences with love, loss and self-discovery, resonated with audiences across Africa and beyond. Songs like Worth and Pressure spoke to young people struggling with family expectations and societal norms. By her second year in the industry, Mary, now performing as Mary Gold, had won 3 Headies Awards, performed at the Global Citizen Festival, and earned more money than her parents had made in their combined 20 years of academic careers. The success was gratifying, but it came with a price. The Etiko family, once united in their academic pride, was forced to confront how wrong they had been, not just about Daniel, but about the very foundations of their value system. Dr. Grace attended every one of Mary's concerts in Lagos, watching with a mixture of pride and regret as her daughter commanded stages and moved audiences to tears. "I spent so many years trying to fit you into our mold," she confessed after one performance. "I never saw that you were already perfect as you were." Professor James, his health restored but his perspective forever changed, became his daughter's biggest supporter. "Daniel Okafor gave me more than a kidney," he would tell people. "He gave me the chance to see my daughter become who she was meant to be." The twins, Michael and Matthew, finishing their medical degrees, began to understand that their sister's path required just as much discipline, creativity, and intelligence as their own. But it was Sarah who perhaps understood best. As a pilot, she knew what it meant to soar above conventional expectations. "You know," she told Mary during a family dinner, "I think Daniel would be proud of you now." Mary smiled sadly. "I hope so. I hope he's happy wherever he is." 3 years after Daniel's departure, the Etiko family had fundamentally changed. Professor James's kidney transplant had become more than a medical procedure. It was a symbol of their transformation. They had learned that education without wisdom is incomplete, that degrees without character are meaningless, that love and generosity matter more than certificates and titles. Dr. Grace began volunteering at schools in underserved communities, using her engineering expertise to improve infrastructure while learning humility from people she had once looked down upon. Professor James incorporated lessons about character, service, and open-mindedness into his lectures, often sharing the story of a young man who taught his family the difference between education and wisdom. The twins chose their medical specialties partly based on service to underserved populations, having learned that knowledge is meant to serve humanity, not elevate the knowledgeable. And Mary continued to soar, her music touching lives across the world while carrying the bittersweet lesson of love lost to prejudice. At her latest concert at the Etiko Convention Center, as Mary performed her hit song Second Chances to a crowd of 20,000, she spotted a familiar figure in the VIP section. Daniel Okafor sat with a small group, clapping respectfully but not drawing attention to himself. Their eyes met for a moment across the crowd. He smiled, the same gentle, knowing smile she remembered, and nodded slightly. It was acknowledgement, appreciation for her growth, and perhaps forgiveness. When the concert ended and the crowd dispersed, he was gone. But Mary carried with her the knowledge that some lessons, however painful, are worth learning. That love lost to prejudice can still teach us to love better. And that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you who you're capable of becoming. The Etiko family's certificates still hung on their living room walls, but now they shared space with photos from Mary's concerts, awards from her humanitarian work, and a small framed reminder that Professor James read every morning. Character is not built in comfort, but in the storms that test our values. In the end, they learned that true education never stops, and the most important lessons often come from the people we least expect to teach us.